constituent of young people, further committed to be engaged in continual rice production at the Sapo rice fields. Their attacks on a more serious footing involves cultivation of 600 hectares of rice farms with continued support from government.
If we harness the opportunities we have in this region, we can provide food for this country.
How would this committee enhance to make sure that, this time around things are better coordinated and facilitated to enhance more productivity?
We've been seeing the work and the strategies that we are trying to put in place, and I believe if all those things could work very well, believe me, come in the next 2-3 years to come, nobody will talk about such a thing again.
Their visits to youth farms, particularly in Digante village in Lower River region, shows a remarkable turnout, cheering their presence, but one that further requests for their support in providing basic farming tools. Their tour continues in the West Coast region. Babukar Kamara, GRTS.
We'll take our first break. The news continues in just a moment. Welcome back. Top-ranking police officers in Senegal are suspected of drug trafficking in an unprecedented scandal, making headlines in the West African state for the last few days. The government has ordered investigations into the story revealed by a local paper. We have details of that story in this report.
Senegal, like Abdoulaye Nyon seen here, are suspected of drug trafficking. The scandal has been making the headlines for the last few days. A local paper broke the story, and President Macky Sall has already ordered an investigation to shed light on the matter. The government's spokesman held a press conference, and he outlined the investigation.
The purpose of this investigation is to find out who is responsible in the matter, if in fact there is a matter, and who took part in this, and what kind of disciplinary measures should be applied. That's normal. It could go beyond simple disciplinary measures, and the judicial authorities have already been contacted.
The Senegalese NGO Germa, which has fought against drugs and other social problems for 30 years, has laid out what it expects from the investigation.
In the last investigations carried out in Senegal, we spoke of many things such as corruption, but this issue is so widespread that it requires a great deal of reflection and immediate action, but just and fair action. We have made a declaration denouncing this and demanding that light be shed on the matter. The integrity, the dignity, and even the security of our country is at stake.
Every year on June 26th, the Senegalese authorities burn all the drugs seized over the course of the year. In 2013, over 2.5 tons of marijuana and 13 kilograms of hard drugs worth 2 billion CFA francs were destroyed.
And a real estate housing boom is driving the poor out of the city in DR Congo, with average rental fees hitting $2,000. Only a few categories of people, mostly foreigners, professionals and experts, are able to afford the high charges. Low-cost houses are being built by the government, but with Kinshasa's population moving to 10 million and more, this is proving to be unproductive. For more on that story, we turn to the CFI report.
Is currently experiencing a major real estate boom with buildings under construction. Brand new office buildings, shopping centers and apartments are springing up and changing the face of the center of the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. As the buildings go up, so do the rents.
An average Congolese family cannot afford rents of at least $2,000. $500, $600, $700, yes, but $2,000, there are not many. Only a small category of wealthy families can afford to rent these apartments, or foreigners use these apartments, expats.
Most of the residents of the city center can no longer afford to live there, so they had to move to the outskirts, and many are now living in precarious conditions far from everything. Some even live on floodplains.
We are poor and abandoned. No politician has ever set foot here. They only think of us during electoral campaigns when they come here with T-shirts and 1,000-franc bills.
8 years ago, the government announced the construction of 4,500 low-cost housing structures. So far, only around 100 have been built.
The government had other priorities, so we needed to finance these priorities first. And we also paid certain companies to carry out the work, but they never followed through with it.
The housing crisis in Kinshasa will only get worse because analysts predict that the Congolese capital, which has a current population of 10 million, will shoot up to 12 million in only a few years.
In Egypt, one is either for or against Morsi, the latest offshoot of political divisions. Pro- and anti-Morsi rallies have continued through the night, bringing thousands on the streets. Pro-Morsi supporters demand the restitution of the Islamist leader, who has been detained by the army since his removal from office on July the 3rd. We have more on that story in this report.
Thousands of supporters of ousted Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi rallied on Friday, just a few days after the interim government took power. Protesters are demanding the restitution of the Islamist leader, who has been detained by the army since he was removed from office on July 3rd.
All of our achievements have been destroyed. It's a coup d'etat against the will of the people. He was the first elected president in the history of Egypt. The army carried out a coup against him. All Egyptians are in the streets today because they feel they have been robbed of their power of choice.
Protests were held in all major cities. Although no serious incidents were reported in Cairo, in Mansoura, in the Nile Delta, 3 women were killed and 7 people injured in clashes between pro- and anti-Morsi protesters. Supporters of the new government refused to let the Islamists dominate the streets and staged counter-demonstrations. They carried portraits of General Sisi, who removed Morsi from power and installed the interim government.
We're here to support the Sisi and the army and to tell the whole world this is the population will not cope. We're here to fight for Islam and Christians and Egypt, and this is why we're here today.
On Saturday morning, pro-Morsi demonstrators were still in the streets. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister met with the King of Jordan, the first head of state to visit Egypt since the fall of President Morsi, and the first to express his support for the new government.
We now take a second break. Welcome back. A local Nawetan football team in Tabokota has benefited from a donation of football materials worth over $40,000. The items were donated by Ambassador Dr. Kenneth O. Jackson. Mambodo S. Jaro reports on the presentation, which was also attended by Ansumana Jammeh, the Gambia's ambassador to Qatar.
The Nawetan football season, football clubs across the Greater Banjul are busy preparing ahead of the summer football fiesta. Being the country's most exciting football season, teams are getting ready for the Nawetans, from intensive training on the pitch to acquiring the required football materials for the 4-month football jamboree. Well, one team that has been boosted ahead of the Nawetans is a newly formed football club in Tabokoto called Ambassador Dr. Jackson Football Club. The team received a donation of quality football materials worth $40,000 from the Gambia's ambassador at large, Ambassador Dr. Kenneth D. Jackson. The materials, which include jerseys, football boots, and bibs, were handed over to the team at a presentation ceremony presided over by Dr. Jackson and attended by players and officials of the team. Presenting the materials to the beneficiaries, Dr. Jackson described it as a way of empowering the youths, who are the future of the country.
Well, I'm very happy about it. It's always good to be able to do things that encourage and promote the youth. The youth are the future of the country, the future of the nation, the future of the world is in the hands of young people. So we need to do the things that we can do to encourage them, especially when the activities are positive. And athletic activities are opportunities to build not only athletic ability, but to develop positive character and learn to perform well under stress and strain. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and I'm glad to be able to have the opportunity to do so.
Being a strong admirer of the Jammeh administration, Ambassador Jackson believes such investment in the youths will complement government effort and ultimately